So I wanted to review this video real quick. As you can see, Nigerians in New York celebrating Nigeria's 64th Independence Day. My initial thoughts here is I don't necessarily see anything crazy about this. People celebrate their culture, their ethnicity all the time in America. You think of, the Chinese New Year for the Chinese, St. Patrick's Day for the Irish, Diwali for the Hindus, Cinco de Mayo for Mexicans. I mean, it's so common to see people celebrate their culture, whether it be related to specific important holidays in their country or just an overall reflection and celebration of their ethnicity. So I don't see anything particularly crazy about this. They're having a good time. They're doing a festival. They're probably making money or selling things. And to me, it seems overall like a lovely event. While I have had overall great experiences with not only just Nigerians, just people from the diaspora in general, I can recognize that there are likely African Americans, Black Americans who have not, who maybe have felt slighted, who maybe have had really negative, unfortunate, or just toxic interactions with those with African immigrants or Caribbean immigrants or just other Black immigrants in general. And so I don't want to downplay those experiences and I don't want to pretend like they don't exist. I'm sure they do. I would just offer up the perspective that it's certainly not everybody. My interactions with Africans that I've experienced have been really positive. So I want to offer that up because I'm like, it is also possible, and there is a world that exists in which Black folks actually get together and they're celebrating different cultural differences instead of it seeing it as a reason to delineate. So those are my thoughts on the situation. But I did want to check out the comments because I do know not everyone shares my point of view when it comes to these cultural expressions, and especially as it relates to Nigerians. So I want to hear what other people have to say about this topic. Okay. Here's first one. It says, okay, how can you celebrate independence in a foreign soil? Nigerians are a disappointment and they like to disrespect natives. So to his earlier point, Cinco de Mayo is obviously a prime example of that. Also, if you think of, Passover for the Jewish people, they definitely celebrate independence. And as I mentioned before, it is not uncommon for people to celebrate, whether it be an important holiday, an important event from their own country, or just celebrate their own heritage in general. So, okay, this one says, meanwhile in Nigeria, no one is celebrating. I'm not in Nigeria, so I don't really know. It says they should go to Nigeria and celebrate. Okay, so these just sound like people who are not into Nigerians. It says, I speak for all Nigerians when I say we don't recognize those people. Okay, so this sounds like this person is not happy about it. It says celebrating your country independence while in another country is kind of wild. Yeah, I don't understand why people are saying this because other cultures do this. I mean, if we understand like the prevalence of Cinco de Mayo, that's literally what it's about, right? It's about a celebration of a victory that the Mexicans had over the time over the French, and their own fight towards independence from colonization. So this is not abnormal. That's why I don't understand why this is like people are so floored at this. It says USA is a country with the highest population of Nigerians outside of Nigeria. Very interesting. Says data from the International Organization of Migration puts population of Nigerian in diaspora at roughly 17 million as of 2024. Yeah, Nigerians really are everywhere, like in some of the most random places, at least from what I've observed. I'd have to verify that, but would not be surprised if that was the case. Because they are celebrating because they are not in the country. We did see Shega for this country. Okay, it says we are celebrating because they are not in the country. Okay, another one says when you're reaping the green and white 4,000 miles from home. Okay, so it sounds like there's a lot of negative feedback from this event so far. A lot of people who are not happy about these Nigerians celebrating their country in another country. It says this is very bad. We didn't celebrate it in Nigeria. The economy is struggling. Nigerians always, it says, New York just turned green and white. Nigerians always bring the energy, and the 64th Independence Day celebration is no different. It's more than just a party. It's a whole vibe. So there's someone there who's like, okay, happy about it. Probably Nigerian. Respect to my Nigerian friends across the world. Great people. The other one, they were paid to celebrate. Those in Nigeria are rather protesting. It's a show to make the world not to understand what's really going on in the country. Very interesting. So, it's actually very interesting because we see a mix people here who I think are just frustrated because they're Nigerian, just don't want them there. But then it also appears as if you have some Nigerians who themselves are kind of frustrated because they feel like Nigerians actually at home aren't celebrated because of their own different challenges. And so this is, a very interesting thing. For those of you who didn't know, I had the chance to go to Nigeria a few months earlier. I was there um, visiting a church, I was there, the group of people. It was my first time ever going. I had an amazing time. I've had a chance so far to visit now 3 African countries: Tanzania, Zanzibar, and then now Nigeria. But while I was there, some of the locals did explain to me some of the different, the different corruption in the government and how that is continuing to impact and make it harder for local Nigerians. And so there is obviously a huge disparity. You see those who are doing quite well, living in gated communities, having their own maids and their own workers, and they have their generators to have their own electricity and handle, basically live a nice, comfortable life. And then you have the opposite end of the spectrum, a huge disparity between the rich and the poor. And a lot of that has to do not due to lack of resources as much as it has to do just with a lot of corruption and politics and the complications related to that. And again, 64 years, it's still a very new country from that vantage point. So a complicated scenario, but my ultimate point was I see nothing wrong with a culture of celebrating, having a festival to honor their culture when they're in America. America by default is a melting pot. That's really how it started. And that's how it's continued to be. And so I'm like, if they're not going out doing anybody, I didn't see no gunshots. I didn't hear nobody get killed, no fights breaking out. They're just having fun and celebrating themselves. I see nothing wrong. I also wanted to be quite clear that, at the end of the day, I think a lot of the division that we're seeing online is fabricated. Not to say that there isn't xenophobia, not to say that there isn't some, challenges that Black folks maybe have with Black immigrants or whatever, but I think a lot of it is promoted more so than what it actually is. And that's by design, because there's a real threat if Black people were able to actually organize internationally. That would be a huge threat to the power system, and nobody wants that. If you think of white people, right? In white culture, they have beef, right? Irish don't always get along with the British, right? Because Ireland at one point they were colonized, and then you Anglos weren't really walking with the Eastern Europeans. Like, they weren't even really considered white when they first came over. You know what I mean? So it's like, look, white people, they have their own beef. But when it comes to organizing to get stuff done, and when it comes to organizing to delineate against non-white people, they do that very well. They know how to work with those who they might consider their enemies to ultimately get their point across. So I'm like, politically, they have a stronger strategy. And so I think some of the stuff that we see online, the division, the, oh, well, you're this, you're that, and like the stirring up the anger, the stirring up the xenophobia, the stirring up the frustration. Honestly, I think, quite frankly, that some of that is literally a ploy of the powers that be to keep Black folks divided, because Africa today is powering the world resource-wise. And so, like I said, imagine if Black people, the children of Africa, the descendants of those, were actually benefiting from the resources that actually come from the continent. Oh man, that would be a huge threat. And so people don't want that. And so it's more expedient to drive division. It's more expedient to drive, to profit off of the xenophobia, the self-hatred, the anger, the disrespect, the ignorance, the propaganda, to keep people divided. Because as long as folks can stay divided, then they can be controlled. And I ultimately think that is what's going on here. But anyways, those are my thoughts. What do you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know. Leave your questions, comments, concerns in the comment section below. Thank you so much for listening if you've gotten this far. And we'll talk later. Bye.